Hi everyone. So I'm here with my good friend Mahesh Gordhan. He is an Akashic Records reader, a spiritualist. I've been working with him since 2013 in School of Spirituality that he founded. And I'm really excited to hold this podcast today with him on the topics of karma and ancestral karma. And I know I haven't been holding this podcast for some time now, so I'm really excited to do this with him today. So first of all, Mahesh, if you can introduce yourself a little bit. I sort of, introduced you a bit, but you can tell us more about you.
Okay. Thank you, Christina. I'm excited to do this because I was thinking about karma this morning and what it means to the world and all that. My journey started 16 years ago when my psychic ability opened up literally overnight. I could see, people's past lives. I could see so much in the space of a couple of weeks, and it was mind-boggling. It was very difficult at the time because I didn't really understand any of it because I was not in the spiritual community, had no awareness. I knew a little bit about clairvoyance and all that, but not really. I left my corporate job and started to understand it and learn it, and it's been exciting. And the Akashic Records and stuff that I've learned and then gone on to teach has been a lot of fun. And it's helped a lot of people, and that's what I like doing, is helping people. So that's pretty important to me.
I know you like helping people just like I do. So this is something we have in common. And also we have in common a soul connection, as you know, which goes back to many past lives. And I think this is so interesting because this is where, the concept of past lives and karma also comes into play because we didn't meet by chance, as you very well know. And I think we're going to start the topic on karma, what karma actually is. And this is so important for people to know because there's a lot of different definitions of karma, a lot of, confusing concepts. So I'm curious to hear your take on karma.
Okay, so karma is something that happens as a result of us taking a life here and experiencing a human being life. Or, we can have karma with animals. Essentially, karma is an experience in a sense that we've created negatively. So all positively, but we tend to look at karma in a negative way. So let's example, I did something wrong in my past life against you, Christina. Then in this life, you would do the opposite. Yeah. But there is another way of interpreting karma too. Rather than me doing something negative in this, you doing something negative in this life, I could do something positive, which cancelled the karma. So two ways of resolving karma. And it's just an experience, really. And I was thinking about karma this morning and thinking, eons ago, back in 14th century and that, there were some pretty horrific things that went on. People's heads were cut off and all this sort of stuff. And we hear about things that are going on today in war and that. Some of that, not all of it, is karma. People are playing out their karma. And I've seen all sorts of things over the years of doing this. Karma vows, people making a vow to do this, and then it happening 2 lifetimes later and things like that. So karma is just an agreement at a soul level that if I do something bad to you, there will be an imbalance, and that's got to be balanced out some way. Okay.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting take for sure. That there are repercussions and consequences, right? And I think that this is also part of the definition that I have for karma. The fact that for me, karma is the baggage that is that we carry from our past lives, energetically, emotionally, mentally, in our cellular memory, as in everything that happens leaves an imprint, as you very well know. So every action lives an imprint, every thought, every emotion, and everything we've ever lived, we carry with us to the next life. Of course, some of the things we can resolve, but many things are left, unresolved, or they shouldn't be resolved really, because, for example, in the term of soul connection, right? When we think about soul connections, we meet people again and again in our lifetimes because we are connected to them in some way. And some of the connections are positive, right? Like not necessarily negative. And I see all of this as part of karma. So I think it's a very vast subject, isn't it?
And sometimes positive karmas can be over the top, and the reverse can apply. Like in some cases, I remember having a client and she had an amazing life with this guy. And in this life, it was the opposite. It was terrible. And it upset a lot of relationships. So, a lot of it is just do the best you can do, given your circumstances. And you can dissolve karma too, because, if I commit the karmic act, I'm carrying it. It's like a flag on me that when you meet me, you just feel drawn to do the opposite to what happened in the past life. And that's what it is. I mean, I run a soul rebirth program, which is all about dissolving karma. And that a lot of people are doing that. They're doing good things to dissolve karma in their cellular structures. One other thing that I came across is ancestral karma. Now, you may have not got a lot of karma yourself, but at some level, if you're highly evolved spiritually, when you're incarnating, you meet your ancestors. And so you agree with them to take upon their karma so they can move out of the realm that they're in into the higher realms. And so that's another aspect of karma, not directly attributed to you, but something that you accept on behalf of your ancestors. And I've found that quite interesting of late. There's been quite a few people that have come to meet synchronistically or not, that I'm having to help them resolve the ancestral karma. And there's a process. A lot of this can be done in simple and effective processes. It doesn't need to be hard. It just needs to be identified. What is it? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been working on ancestral karma with timeline therapy and regressions. So I've seen people carry a lot of karma from their ancestors. And some of them already knew that on an unconscious level, even if they don't really necessarily believe in spirituality or, ancestral karma and all of that. So, yeah, ancestral karma is an important topic for sure. I know you've been working with it as well. I think like maybe we should explain a little bit more about this concept of ancestral karma. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't try and make it too complex, but it does vary from person to person. And, it can be from the mother's side or the father's side or both. It affects you in a way where you think, I've never really done anything wrong. Why am I getting affected by all this stuff? And it's like handed through your ancestors for you to take on. And it's not difficult. And the people that I've done it with, help them resolve it. They actually communicate with their ancestors as part of the process. So quite a surprise. And they're surprised at how the families, after the ancestor karma is dissolved, how the families, when they're fragmented, can come together as like nothing happened. It's been interesting in that way.
Yeah.
So when you do it on timeline therapy, you're going back in terms of the ancestors and you're understanding that and dissolving and getting them to accept it. Because a lot of it is just about accepting what's happened and moving through it. Because karmically, you can get stuck in what I call the middle layer and not progress to the higher realms. And that doesn't even give you a chance to do your karma, right? So that you take on a board to do the karma for them. And as I say, the person who if you're doing the ancestral karma, you're usually quite spiritually evolved, that your karma is very low. And so for you, it's not a big issue at a spiritual level, at a soul level. So taking it on board is something that you do. And I found it quite interesting because I usually find that when I look at these people, when they're going through that, I can see that they're evolved. And they've been chosen, or they've just offered themselves as the person to do it on behalf of the soul family or even the ancestral family. Depends on, can be a variety of circumstances. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, like my experience with ancestral karma is that many people have phobias or fears or emotions that aren't theirs, and they think they come from this lifetime. And then we look deeper into it, and they're not even theirs. They come from a past ancestor or something.
Yeah. I mean, when I first started this journey, I remember, having this feeling inside me, and it was a feeling of loss. And I thought I dealt with everything in this life, so I couldn't understand why I had this deep feeling of loss. And I remember connecting with somebody I know, and I said, "Look, I've got this feeling of loss." And she looked at me straight away and she said, "Oh, well, that's your past life karma." I was just shocked. And then I did a regression on myself, and I was a woman in Roman times, and my husband had gone off to war. and that had created a deep sense of loss in me. And so that was for me in that side. But yeah, ancestral karma is another thing. And sometimes you may be in a family and one person is responsible for doing the ancestral karma. I know there's a bit of ancestor karma in our family, and yet, I mean, I'm not to do it, but I know that my youngest brother should be doing it, but he doesn't want to. So in a sense, I may take it on his behalf and do it because he doesn't believe in some of the stuff. He allow things to happen and that sort of thing. He doesn't understand it. So it's, in some ways, I'll put my foot forward and say, look, I'll do this in the end. It's not, as I say, it's not hard. It's a process and it's time consuming and all that sort of stuff. But it's straightforward overall, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's all part of the Akashic Records, isn't it? Because you know also about the Akashic Records. You've been reading the Akashic Records. I've been reading the Akashic Records with people together through my sessions and past life regression and astral travel. So the Akashic Records, I just want to touch a bit on this topic because I know it's quite important for many people, because many people heard about this notion of the Akashic Records, but maybe they don't know exactly what it means. So what we've been just talking about, the karma and ancestral karma and all of this baggage and energetic things, all of these are part of the Akashic Records. So the Akashic Records are like library, really, are, let's say, a metaphysical library where all the information is stored of everything that ever happened and all the potential that is for things to happen in the future. Well, we think in terms of, in terms of past and future, as you know, Mahesh, because we are here in this time-space reality, but really there is no past, and future. Everything happens at the same time. Things are not linear as we go outside of this third dimension. So the Akashic Records is literally, let's say, the mind of God. This is how I would see it. And when you access this Akashic Record, you can read, you can see what happened to you in your past lives, why you have a certain karma, how you can resolve it. You can, see what happened to your ancestors, your potential for this life, and also your potential for your spirit and what your spirit's mission is. So this is my take on the Akashic Records. I think it's a really interesting topic. So if you want to add anything to this, Mahesh, you're welcome to.
Yeah, I mean, when I started looking into past lives, so in the first week that I had my ability, I was given a book by my girlfriend at the time, written by Dr. Brian Weiss, and he goes into a lot of past lives. And he was the chief of psychiatry at Miami State University. So it is there in science, and in medicine and psychiatry. And so looking at past lives is quite interesting for me. And then I started going down that in the Akashic Records, and that is so easy for me to access. And I just need to look at a person and say, oh, well, you got to. I mean, it's not meaningful. There's a movie called Cloud Atlas that I absolutely love.
I love this book.
Yeah, it's got Halle Berry, Tom Hanks, a number of lead actors, and they look at all this past life stuff, and it's amazing. It really is.
I mean, it's great that you mentioned that movie Cloud Atlas because it's one of my favorites as well, because I think it shows so well, this concept of past lives, isn't it? The concepts of karma and past life and reincarnation and the Akashic Records, I just love how, so for anyone that wants to see like a visual concept of karma and reincarnation and Akashic Records, I do recommend the movie Cloud Atlas because it's
I mean, it's amazing. I can remember when I first got my ability, I think in the first month, I was back in New Zealand, because I'm originally from New Zealand, and walking down the street, and I walked past a girl, and we connected, and it was just unraveled my past life with her. Obviously, she wouldn't know, but it was just like, I was just amazed at how much. And we just, two individuals walking down the street in opposite directions. It's probably rare, 10 to 20% of the people I meet, I have a past life connection. Yeah. And I remember teaching the Akashic Records in a workshop, and there was 11 of us, and I gave them all a date to do the regression back to, and it was something like 1786, and it was a date in April or whatever it was, I can't remember. And I went into it myself, and I could see we're all on a ship, and and I thought this is unusual, so I looked it up the date, and everybody came out of the regression and that, and I said to everybody who was on the ship, and out of the 11, 10 were on the ship. And it was the day that Magellan set sail. And that was just mind-blowing for the class, that they were all on a ship and all together, and they could all see each other in that past life. They knew who that person was and all that. And the person that wasn't on the ship knew about the ship leaving, but wasn't on the ship, missed the ship for whatever reason. And so those sorts of things are really amazing experiences that you can have and connect to people and be, aligned with their experience and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I remember I had a couple of people in regression that told me they were on the Titanic and they saw themselves there
Oh,
and, how they looked like and, what happened. And it was quite fascinating.
yeah. So I did go into one of my past lives, and I was one of the three wise men of Jesus. There was actually four wise men. Well, there's a woman who came with us, and she got ill on the way. Well, she didn't get ill. She actually had a period, so she couldn't come, and so she stopped halfway. But the three wise men went to see. Well, I was one of them, and why we took the frankincense and myrrh, and all that gives you understanding of what's happened and why and all these sorts of things. A lot of it is all about why are these things happening for me. It's always interesting. And then what happened later on when Jesus came to India and all these sorts of things. And all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle are there. We just need to piece them together in the right way and understand the whole picture of what's going on, rather than what's written in books. Sometimes what we read in books is not real history, and sometimes it is.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
books have been, written and rewritten and, so on. So the essential information for many of the spiritual books has been lost or perhaps hidden on purpose. And speaking of India, I know you are in India right now.
Yeah, I'm in India.
Sorry, I've seen you yawn a little bit, so I think it's a bit late for you, isn't it? It's a bit late in the evening.
It is. It's evening.
Yeah. I hope
So,
you're okay.
yeah, no, it's fine. India's a really interesting place. There's been a lot of history here. I mean, I've done Rishikesh and Varanasi and a few other places. I've been to Dharamsala where Buddha, the Dalai Lama is at the moment, and because he escaped there and all that to there. And I love parts of India. I mean, obviously there's still a lot of things I don't like, the poverty and all that. But otherwise, I enjoy being here for a period of time. But yeah, now I'm here and I can still work online. I can be wherever I want. And that's the beauty of some of the work that I do. I can do it online with anybody from anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I loved it. And I think this is one of the good things that came out of the pandemic, at least for me, is that I took this shift and I went full online and I don't regret it. So I think it was a big change, that there was a good change in the end because I can reach people globally. I'm not bound to a certain, area in the world.
Yeah, I was looking today actually at how many countries I've had clients, and I think it was just over 20 countries of, some places like Ecuador that, it's word of mouth to a certain extent if people find out about you for me. And yeah, it's been interesting having people from different countries and all that. And, I've taught psychic development in a number of countries too and translating the language, but everybody's interested in the spiritual development. And it's becoming more and more open and more aware and all these sorts of things. So yeah, and karma and people are wanting to know more about things like this, wanting to deal with things because something internally is driving them to open up more and understand more, which is really cool. Yeah.
Yes, I've noticed this, that people are seeking this more and more, which is amazing. Some of the people that I've known for decades and they weren't interested in this kind of things, spirituality, karma, etc. Now they're looking into it, they're open, to these things. So that's amazing.
Yeah, no, it is. It's good to see the changes going on in this world, and yeah, I mean, I remember when my ability first opened up. 6 months later, I was working in Fiji, and this girl, I did a session with her, and she wasn't at all spiritual. Now, some 16 years later, she's looking more at things spiritually, and it just shows you. For me, it shows me that people are changing, and that's great to see. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think, we're heading into what people call the golden age, right? But I think really right now, I would say many people seem to agree, especially when I look at, blogs and communities of people, sharing information and talking about these things. I think it's kind of what they called in the Bible the end of days, something like that. So we are going through this end of days which is actually, it is a sort of apocalypse, but it is more like in the background. It's more like, in the 4D and the 5D. There's a lot of karma, actually. Speaking of karma, there's a lot of collective karma that is being, released, a lot of negative collective karma, and even individual one. And I've seen a lot of people search this kind of work, past life regression, astral travel, karma clearing. And I think in those times, it's so important for people to do that, because as we clear this individual and collective karma, we're making way for a new reality for us and for the whole world, and to be able to build what this, this golden age that people talk about.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that if you don't follow your inner voice, things become more difficult, and it can be a very painful exercise dealing with it. And so it's better to be proactive and just go with your inner guidance. I think inner guidance is so important. Like when my ability opened up, I just resigned from my job within a month, just went with the guidance I trusted, and it made a big difference. I remember reading the book Jonathan Livingston Seagull, and that was quite inspirational. It sort of started me on a journey of believing in what you want to believe in, and that's it. And trusting your inner self, because you're the person, it's your life. It's what you got to do, and it's nobody else's life. Nobody can tell you how to live. It's your decision on how you decide to live.
Yeah, I think, the concept of being your own guru is also very important, because, some people, they tend to want to follow someone like a guru or like spiritual leader or whatnot. And I think, if you follow, in my opinion, if you follow just one person or just one path, you narrow your perspective, and your
Yeah,
spirit free to explore multiple, paths, spiritual paths, to find your own mission and your own path. And for that, you need to have an open mind. So this is what I think is very important, to be
yeah,
your own master, become your own master, become your own guru, so to speak, right?
yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, if it doesn't resonate, it doesn't resonate with you, and it may not be on your path, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's whatever
Mm,
resonates with you that you need to go through, and things like that. And I
mm,
always say to people, at some stage, we're all beginners. At some point in time, it doesn't matter when you start. And some people say, well, how you've learned that so much and all that, and I'm just starting out. Well, it doesn't matter. I
mm,
started out when I started out. There are people who before me started. It doesn't really matter when you start. It's your time for you. And as I say, it's an inner journey. It's your journey. Nobody can tell you when to start, and even your soul purpose. From something, that's one thing that I say to people. I don't want to tell them their soul purpose, because that's for them to discover. It's like, for me,
mm.
sometimes it's like cheating in an exam. It's best to do the exam yourself and all that sort of stuff, and find your purpose. It's more rewarding in that way. Yeah.
Mm. Yes,
So yeah.
exactly. Like cheating. Exactly. I like this analogy. And
So
you
yeah.
mentioned that, story that, you listen to spirit, and you followed, your intuition, and, you left your corporate job, and then, everything started. I wonder if you can tell us maybe a little bit about it, maybe like in a few words, how this happened.
Well, I'd done some regression therapy, and it was sort of like, it was January 2008. January 2008. I'd done 4 sessions, and out came this trauma that I wasn't aware of, childhood trauma. And it wasn't on me, it was on sisters in my family, but it blocked my ability, because I was very sensitive with this psychic ability and very consciously aware. And it was just too much. As a toddler, I was only a year and a half old, it was just too much. And so I blocked it. And then, I went through 2 marriages, knew there was something that I wasn't right about. So I went through counseling for a year, and it didn't really make any difference. And then somebody said, try timeline therapy, which is what you've studied in Christina. And I thought, yeah, okay, let's give it a go. And straight away, it opened me up, and it was really good. But I'll say it opened me up, all this trauma came out. And it took a few sessions, about 4 or 5 sessions, to deal with it all, but it was good. And then suddenly I started knowing things about people, and this ability I didn't even know I had.
Yes, I can hear you now. We lost you a little bit.
Sorry, I get a call. Sorry. Um, so, um, so what happened was that I ended up in a situation of actually saying to him, "Oh, your wife's got beautiful teeth." And he said, she has, but how do you know? And all these things started to come out, and I didn't realize what I was doing. And then I went for tests because my boss wasn't ready. I was saying these things. He said, "You're fine, but you're saying these things." I said, "Yeah, I don't know." And I thought I had a brain tumor or something like that. And then what happened was that, I went to a neurologist and did all these tests and came out and you're fine. And he said, "But your abilities come back again." I said, "What?" And and so I said, "What do I do?" And he says, "We can give you drugs. You become like a zombie, or go out and enjoy it."
Mm.
And at that stage, I could see spirit, and my spirit guide was Margaret, and then I had more. And then they're telling me resign from your job within a couple of weeks, 4 weeks, I think. And I did. They told me over a weekend on the Monday I resigned. My boss couldn't believe it. I was being promoted to exec level and all that sort of stuff. And I just, no, I need to understand it. I mean, I wasn't going to change. Just it had opened, and I just needed to understand all this. And so and that was 2008, March 2008. So it's been an interesting journey, I can say that. It's been difficult at times, very difficult, but it's been amazing. It's opened my eyes to so much out there. And it's just mind blowing. It really is. It is really mind blowing. And, the thing is, we're born to learn X, Y, Z, and we're in a construct. We don't realize there's so much more out there. There is so much. I've seen
Yes.
things like I remember doing healing on a lady once, and I was putting lots of energy into her. And I start with the feet, and then I finish by putting my hand on the feet. When I put my hands on her feet, I felt her body sink into the therapy bed. What? Was she floating? And I said to her afterwards, I was like, "Did you feel you were floating?" She said, "Yeah, I felt I was floating." And it was like she'd come off only a little bit, she was floating off the therapy bed. And it was because
Mm.
all the energy going in was making her lighter and lighter. I was just blown away. It was a really amazing experience. And it's just, these are sorts of things that you'd never believe unless you were there experiencing it. And a lot of it is like that. You have to experience it firsthand. I mean,
Yeah.
people tell you things, but they're just stories, right?
Mm. Yeah, and people don't believe, the basic things, like energy healing and things like that. But when you tell them such stories, like for example, objects moving or, people levitating a bit or, all the things that, I've seen, for example, I think I could write a book about it. And I actually intend to write a book at one point about, my spiritual experiences as well. But there's just so many of them, and it's impossible not to believe in a metaphysical reality. You're just a
Yeah, I
lot.
mean, I've been in situations where people say, "Oh, I don't believe in spirit." I said, "So, well, how about I send one tonight to you?" And they go, "No, don't do that." But it is there, but they're just scared to address it because they're only coping with the reality that they have. And that's what it comes down to. It's coping with what you're comfortable with. And that's okay. That's okay. That's their life. And
You
that's what it
said
comes down
earlier, so your doctor, your neurologist. I mean, I know you went to, do those scans, when your ability started, because, thinking you have a brain tumor and such. But did he
to.
actually, was he the one who recognized that you have an ability? Was he spiritual, your
Yeah, no, he
doctor?
said, no, he said, "Look, we've come across it before. And yeah, we know that, this happens." I mean, we can't
Mm.
say it in medical science because they don't acknowledge it. But he said, yeah, it's there. I mean, we've
Uh,
seen it. And like, I've got a really close friend who's a neurologist in New Zealand. And like, he does stuff that, like, he came on my psychic development class, and it was interesting because he knows all this stuff, but, he still has to follow this prescription of medical science, which is fine. It's the way it is. And it's slowly evolving. And he's part of that evolution. He can do some certain things on your crown chakra, which are just mind blowing.
yeah.
And I've had people have sort of treatments from it using as energy, and they just say
Mm.
they're flying. They just feel like they're flying in their heads. Yeah, it's kind of crazy stuff. But yeah,
Yeah, it's really good that there are some people that, are doctors and in the scientific communities that are actually, they believe in this, they're open to this. But I also think that science, and the metaphysical world is coming together, slowly. And it's not just as you and I know through quantum physics, but also through neuroscience. And a lot of those things are kind of explained now through neuroscience, the connections, between the neurons, the neuroplasticity, making new synapses in the brain, changing how your mind works, the fact that the brain has its own electromagnetic field and all of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I learned a technique recently that I can hold a tablet even though I don't know what it's for. I can tell you what it's for, even though nobody would tell me what it is. I say, well, this is for this, and these are the side effects. And so it's people are developing these abilities. I don't believe I'm alone in that. They can say this is good or this is not good based on what they're feeling. And it's just opening up the sensitivity to these things and being accepting them. I was a bit blown away when I did it. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I thought, I'm not thinking about me, I'm thinking about if other people can do it too. Because I don't think I'm alone in this. I think there are other people out there that can do these sorts of things. And yeah, it's interesting. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I think there's a lot of people who have psychic ability, but I also think they're awakening now, kind of on their own because of the times we're living, everything is kind of accelerating and coming to the surface now.
Yeah, I feel that's really there and it's out in the open and more people are accepting it. I was listening to a podcast about a lady who had an NDE and she visited God and that was back in 1988. Now, she never told anybody about it for 20, 25 years because nobody would believe it. And now she's written a book and people are believing it. I mean, things are changing. People just have to have an open mind. And if they've got any questions or that, they can approach me or you in terms of, questions and understanding. And a lot of it is about just tapping into the deeper part of yourself. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. I hope we can do more podcasts like this in the future on different topics because I really enjoy talking to you. We've been talking obviously off camera a lot, but I think we should, do more conversations on camera because they always flow and we have interesting topics to talk about. So thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Aliens would be a
Okay.
good subject to cover at some stage.
What's that? Sorry.
Aliens.
Yeah, that's a really interesting.
Maybe next one. Yeah.
Next one for sure. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Take care. Blessing.